To both of you, Scott and DR, we appreciate that. The breaking news that you may have seen flashed at the bottom of your screen comes to us from UCLA out in Los Angeles. The police are investigating out there this possible shooter on the UCLA campus. So we've seen some tweets coming out of their official Twitter account where the police are looking at a possible shooter at what they call Bolter Hall on the campus of UCLA. And they say in one of their what they call Bruin alerts on the Twitter that the shooting was at Engineering 4. I assume that's a reference to a building there or possibly a room within that building, Bolter Hall. And they say in telling people to go to a secure location, deny entry now, exclamation point, deny entry to what is referred to as Engineering 4, Bolter Hall, UCLA, on that campus. So we'll keep an eye on this, obviously, and you can see the heavy police presence from the overhead shot coming courtesy of KABC out on the West Coast. Investigation into a possible shooter at UCLA. More coming up.
In the last hour, anything could change.
We're looking at green on the screen for the market.
Risk claiming keeps you a step ahead.
The stock that's dividing Wall Street. Two names on the tip of investors' tongues right now.
Countdown to the closing bell, only on Fox Business Network.
You wouldn't take medicine without checking the side effects.
Hey, honey. Huh. Well, the good news is my hypertension's gone.
So why would you invest without checking BrokerCheck? Check your broker with BrokerCheck.
Home Advisor is a very easy way to find a home contractor, and for me, it's the only way.
Home Advisor instantly connects you with top-rated pros for any type of home project.
If you need it, Home Advisor has it.
And it's completely free. Go to homeadvisor.com now.
Identity theft can happen to anyone.
Somebody had my social security number and my birthday, and these individuals were trying to open a cell phone account. I didn't know what might come next. I was afraid.
I could not believe that somebody would steal my tax refund. It made me angry.
She had my social security number, and she was able to make a purchase for $8,000.
What is your risk for identity theft? Do you shop online, give out your birth date or social security number, use a smartphone? Today's lifestyle makes you more vulnerable than ever. It's no wonder 1 in 4 people have been a victim. What can you do to help protect yourself?
I called LifeLock.
Join the millions of people who made the smart choice to become members of LifeLock, the best identity theft protection available. We scan hundreds of millions of transactions each second to detect and alert you to threats. If you have a problem, a U.S.-based agent will work to fix it.
While free credit monitoring only alerts you to changes in credit, LifeLock detects a wide range of identity threats and helps to resolve problems.
LifeLock, they're not just going to monitor your credit, they're going to be there to help you afterwards if something happens.
If you become a victim of identity theft, LifeLock will spend up to $1 million on experts and lawyers to help fix it.
You have this whole team of people on your side, and you know that you don't have to go it alone.
Start your LifeLock membership right now for as little as $9.99 a month. Every LifeLock member gets identity threat detection and alerts, a U.S.-based agent working to fix issues, up to $1 million for lawyers and experts if needed. Join in minutes. Protection starts immediately.
Having LifeLock there to help us through, we didn't feel like victims anymore.
LifeLock. Call 1-800-846-4550 or visit LifeLockTVOffer.com. Use promo code TVOffer to get your first month free and a free shredder with annual membership. Start your membership with LifeLock today.
It's the middle of the business day. Where can you find smart insight?
Carl Icahn telling us exclusively he is very concerned. We're going to have intel from the campaign trail. The U.S. economy is in a very tight spot.
The Intelligence Report with Trish Regan, only on Fox Business Network.
To the breaking news we're covering on the West Coast for you this afternoon. The police are investigating the possibility of a shooter at the campus of UCLA, as we told you a moment ago. KTTV is reporting out there that it took place in an engineering building. I referred to this before our last break, engineering building number 4, and that is described as being near parking lot 9. We'd have to look at a map of the campus to get a better sense. We're looking at an overhead shot coming in from KTTV right now in the Los Angeles area. We're told by our colleagues at Fox News in the LA Bureau that the LAPD got a call from the campus security at UCLA of an active shooter being on the campus, and they are now responding by sending officers to the scene. It would appear, now the shot is pulled out a little bit, as if many of those law enforcement officials have arrived on the scene, the campus of UCLA. UCLA as we now see one of those law enforcement officials and people being led away with their hands over their heads. EMS truck or EMS ambulance also pulling up. Not sure, obviously, the context of the pictures that you're seeing right now. We only know of a report of a possible shooter inside one of the engineering buildings on the UCLA campus. More as we get it, and we continue to cover this breaking news from the West Coast. Meanwhile, back to a business story today involving United Health. It has signaled that there may be some problems for Obamacare, and the way it's doing it, United Health being the largest health insurance company in the country, is it is announcing it's adding California and Illinois to a list of exchanges it's getting out of. It's exiting Obamacare exchanges. Liz McDonald's been covering all of this, and she joins us now with the latest, which is what, Emek?
So basically, United Health saying that they lost $475 million last year due to Obamacare, and also projecting $500 million. So it's $500 million in losses, this year. So all told, maybe $1 billion in losses for United Health due to Obamacare.
Just getting out.
So they're just getting out, and it looks like they're going to stick and stay in about 5 or 6 states. And those would be Nevada, New York, Virginia, Georgia, and Florida.
So it depends state to state.
It depends. That's right. And so what we're seeing is Humana is also pulling out of some markets. Also, Premier Blue Cross pulling out of some markets. Anthem and Cigna are sticking fast. But what happens here, Connell, is unintended consequences of Obamacare. Many states, including Alabama, Tennessee, Alaska, they're seeing maybe one insurer. So those insurers are getting double-digit rate increases easily passed by the state regulators. So that's an issue for people who are still, struggling with double-digit.
Okay, so something they didn't see coming, we didn't know would happen, and now it is happening. So the way they deal with it is to get out. So,
or hike the rates.
I want to go back to the breaking. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I get it. I get it.
Go back to the breaking news, and we could actually watch this together, Emek, for a moment with UCLA on lockdown. Now we're getting pictures earlier from KTTV, now KABC in the Los Angeles area of the SWAT team. It looks like going in to one of the buildings on the campus of UCLA and running, as you can see, across the street. These are live pictures coming in. The shooter that had been reported was in an engineering building on the campus. So they are investigating the report that there was a shooter in the building. They had sent out tweets from the official UCLA Twitter account that said, if you're in this building, engineering building number 4, go to a secure location. And the way they put it on social media was deny entry. Don't let anybody into that secure location where you are. Take whatever means are necessary to make sure that location remains secure and that nobody else gets into it. Now, as they were doing that, the UCLA officials, they also put a call out, from what we understand, to the local police authorities, the LAPD, and the LAPD then sent over their officers to the campus to deal with the situation. And I'm presuming from the closer shot that we had in the uniforms that those were members of the LAPD that were running up those stairs and at least near that building. It's tough for us to tell without a map of the campus, and maybe we'll get one for you here in a minute, which building is 9, which building is the engineering building that they are dealing with. And now the KTTV shot is zooming in on one of the buildings and looking down at some of the objects below there. But the police officers, I think, have been to the right of that, and we're trying to deal with that. But yet, once again, an active shooter on an American college campus as we switch to a different shot of the parking lot. Remember, the building that was in question was adjacent to one of the parking lots. Parking lot number 9 is what they told us earlier. And those are Los Angeles Police Department vehicles there and officers that have lined up. They do not seem to be moving with as much of a sense of urgency as the other officers were that were clearly running to a location. Unclear to us because we didn't know or couldn't see where they were going. Had they entered that building or were they setting up maybe a perimeter outside the building to deal with this situation as it unfolds. But now, as the shot zooms out, you can see that there is indeed a large police presence. So the call that had come out earlier clearly had been answered, and the LAPD did their best to respond and do so quickly. Now, we do not know at this point of any injuries or any actually, no, we're getting a new report in from the LA Times now, so let me update you on that. The LA Times is reporting that 2 people indeed were injured in this possible shooting at UCLA. This is being reported by the LA Times, citing a law enforcement official or officials. So the campus remains on lockdown, and they're asking people, as I mentioned a little while ago, to shelter in place in that engineering building, if they're in that building on the campus, the engineering building that had been mentioned earlier. But again, from the LA Times, 2 people were injured in that possible shooting. The last day of classes at UCLA was was supposed to be on, or was going to be on Friday, June 3rd, so 2 days from now, a little later than you would be used to in some other college campuses, and the graduation at UCLA is not scheduled to take place until June 10th and June 11th, so the following weekend. That's later than you would expect on other college campuses. Dagan McDowell's in the newsroom following this, along with me as the shot now zooms in on some of those police vehicles here yet again. But boy, it's something to be talking about. Yet another shooting at an educational institution, in this case, a big-time college campus, UCLA. So.
Right in
watching some of the LAPD
Structure 9 and engineering build.
Vehicles down there. I was going to bring Dagan in, so if we have her in the newsroom, we will bring her in, and the two of us will watch these pictures together. But in the meantime, I'll watch them for you as the shot now from KTTV changes a little bit. So it looks like there's a perimeter being set up. The officers may have entered one of those buildings, the engineering building that was in question. We do have formerly of the NYPD, Pat Brosnan, on the phone with us now, the former NYPD detective. I don't know, Pat, what you've been able to pick up from some of these shots. Pat, you're on with us now on the Fox Business Network, that you've been able to pick up from some of these shots that we are watching. But the LA Times is reporting that there are at least 2 people injured in this shooting out of UCLA.
Well, as always, there's a lot of fog involved on this. It's extremely early in the incident, so we're unable to ascertain with any degree of precision what's unfolding. There are reports that 2 are down. The police are developing information on the field. I'm certain that they have put up a perimeter, that they've sheltered in place and locked down east, west, north, and south of the campus. But right now, it's just a confirmed shooting, so details are relatively scarce.
Now, one of the things they did say when they were posting on social media was for people who are in that building, the engineering building where the shooting is said to have taken place, that they should, lock themselves down in place and make the area where they are as secure as possible. How do you do that if you find yourself in that type of a situation, as scary as it may be, inside of a classroom?
Well, it's extremely difficult because they're operating with, at the minimum, one eye closed, because they only know what they're getting through uncorroborated hearsay and gossip and innuendo. So they may not even know factually where the shooter or shooters are located on this sprawling campus and within these sprawling multi-floor buildings. But I would say that as a general rule of the shelter-in-place philosophy and doctrine is to ducking into a closet, locking a closet door, obviously locking doors, making yourself very small to the extent that the shooters can't identify you and don't know that you're in a certain location is the very first step. And again, that's complete logic and pragmatic behavior, but easy to say from the comfort of the studio, not so easy to say if there's gunshots ringing out in your near vicinity. So again, tough stuff and a very, very tough scene.
Of course, as we watch the police officers gather, taking direction now from one of their superiors on the ground in full riot gear, seems to be talking about what their next plan will be and where they will go from that perimeter that Pat had talked about. UCLA, by the way, has confirmed to us at Fox News and Fox Business that the shooting did take place on their campus. So it's not just reports of a shooting, it's a confirmed shooting at the campus of UCLA. The LA Times had reported 2 injuries. Because as we talked to Pat Brosnan, the former NYPD detective, the instinct for a lot of people, I think, if they find themselves in this situation, is to try to get out of it, right? I mean, and that could make it even more dangerous, to make a run for it, to run down a hallway if you hear shots, and sometimes that could put you in an even worse spot, right?
Well, again, difficult to say because every case is dealt on the facts as they unfold. But, we do active shooter. We provide and present active shooter presentations across the spectrum of client bases throughout the United States. So my first instinct and my first directive at these active shooter presentations is to run. Get out of there. Yeah, to run.
If you can, right.
Get out of there. If you can flee at top speed, run like your life depends on it, because it very well may.
That
is secondary position.
Right. Go ahead. What's the secondary position?
Well, the secondary position is what we explored earlier. It's to hide the shelter in place, make yourself small and inconspicuous and hidden in the closet, and maybe cover yourself with some material so the shooters can't identify you as prey to up their body count. But run for the hills. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't have a weapon and you're not trained, and you're not confronted directly, get out of there.
Yeah, don't present yourself as essentially what it would be a sitting duck. If you can get out, get out. It seems like obvious advice, but sometimes in these situations, it's tough to know what the best course of action is. Now, from the police department's perspective, Pat, we watched as you were speaking, as I said, it looked like a lieutenant or a superior in the LAPD giving directions to other police officers in full riot gear as to what they would do next. The priorities when you arrive on a scene like this are what? What do you do in which order?
Priority number one is containment. Containment is number one because the broader threat to society is if this shooter or shooter causes damage inside that building and escapes to unleash further mayhem and further damage and kill and wound others outside of that area. So you want to contain him. You absolutely want to get him, and you want to minimize any additional, obviously, any additional casualties of civilians or police personnel. But by putting out a very defined and constructing a very defined perimeter, that minimizes the chances of these individuals escaping, and that's key.
Right.
You can't have a mad dog out conducting home invasions or jumping into other schools or hijacking or carjacking. These guys are desperados, oftentimes.
Now, if you're first on the scene, though, Pat, and whether you're campus security or your local police or whoever you may be, don't they teach you now to go in as opposed to, that was what we always talk about after Columbine, unfortunately, years ago. They teach you to just go in and do your best in that situation as opposed to waiting back?
Well, it goes department by department. There's really not a 100% agreed upon patrol guide, protocol, or policy. Some departments take the position that the emergency service personnel are better trained, better equipped, better suited for the initial penetration of the building, and the others would be containment and isolation and minimizing casualties of other civilian or police personnel. But it does range, surprisingly, it ranges somewhat dramatically. And I think there's also, input from the type of venue, the type of location, and what the facts are known on the ground. But I think your sense and your conviction is generally accurate because it's all about protecting and serving. So a lone patrolman can bolt in there and win the day by shooting a guy in the head. That's a great job.
Right.
But it may be what occurs, but may not be the exact protocol and policy of that given municipality.
Okay, Pat, thanks. We always appreciate your time and
my pleasure.
Certainly your expertise in a situation like this. Pat Brosnan, formerly of the NYPD. Before we move on, Paul Viollis is with us, and move on to Paul in a second. Let me just recap what we know so far from the campus of UCLA, where the university has confirmed a shooting on their campus. We've had reports coming in from the LA Times of 2 injuries. Those, as far as I know, are not confirmed. What we do have confirmed is that a shooting did take place. The last day, classes are still underway, which may come as a surprise on a college campus because the last day of classes at UCLA was not supposed to be till Friday. So they still had a couple of days of classes, and their graduation is not till the next week. So it was either the 10th or the 11th, depending on what school you were in. But it was an active campus with students on campus, with classes underway, and a shooting that did take place, from what we understand, inside one of the engineering buildings at UCLA. The engineering building, I believe it's building number 4, next to parking lot number 9 on the campus of UCLA. LAPD certainly on the scene in full force after campus security called them when they learned of the shooting. The security brief host is Paul Viollis. And Paul, what do you make of all this?
Well, you know what? I think the first thing that we're really going to need to ascertain is how many are injured, where are they, and can we locate the shooter, and is there more than one?
Right.
What we find, it was typically in the case, in cases like this, is the fact that this is very clearly planned out. Whoever that shooter is or shooters, and typically there's only one, then they had a very clear reason why they went to that particular building at that particular time, because psychologically they're focused on one person or 2 people or 3 people that they blame for their lot in life.
Looks like UCLA is confirming the 2 shooting victims. We talked about this earlier in an LA Times report. The UCLA's just put it on their official Twitter account that they have 2 shooting victims on the campus, and the campus remains on lockdown. They're updating us, so they have a Twitter account that's called UCLA Newsroom, and they're updating this as much as they can. They had a tweet 18 minutes ago about the campus being on lockdown, and this most recent tweet just came a few minutes ago. Campus remains on lockdown, and they say, and this is one way they do it, is by social media to try to keep people updated. But as far as we understand, as far as we know, there are still people, last we heard, inside of that building. That's right. What they were, and maybe you heard me talking to Pat about that, trying to set up what those people should do if they're in that classroom.
Yeah, no, 2 things to think about. This kind of, probably for you as well, reminds me of University the Virginia Tech shooting.
Yeah.
You know, initially there were 2 people down. They didn't realize how many other people were down after that and what happened after that. So the police really have to have that immediate response as far as intelligence gathering across that entire massive UCLA campus to start figuring out, is this just isolated, is it contained, or is this still ongoing? The second part of that, when you look at, you know, where this thing is really headed right now and how this could have happened, I think that's really going to be the biggest question that they're going to have to drill down on, because we just simply don't know at this point.
No, we have no idea. And that's always when you're dealing with something in real time. There's much more that you don't know as opposed to what you do know. But for these authorities, see many of them standing there, undoubtedly part of setting up that so-called perimeter that we talked about earlier. The first responders, this is what I was talking about with Pat, are very important, right, in an active shooter situation.
Critical. But you know, the biggest part is what you just said. How do you know what the perimeter is at this point?
Right.
And you and I have both been to UCLA. We know how massive that campus is.
Well, it is a giant campus in a huge city, and this is, boy, one of the best known colleges in the country, no doubt about it. But to the size of it and the sprawling nature of it, it makes their job more difficult.
What is that perimeter? If you've got LAPD, you've got the police department at UCLA, you've got the sheriff's department, what is that perimeter? And that's what they're deciding on right now. And the other part, too, to your point, which is an excellent point, what do you do? Is it, you know, we often hear run, hide, fight. But then part of the problem with that, and I've not really been a huge proponent of that, part of the problem with that is if you're not teaching people how to evacuate in terms of fire, you evacuate. This is an active shooter. So if people don't know how to properly get out of there, you could be running in the path of the shooter.
Well, that's the thing. There is some debate. Rod Wheeler is also with us, a former homicide detective out of D.C., and there's some debate in the law enforcement community. Rod, what are your thoughts on this and how, you know, just regular people, in this case college students, handle a situation like this if they find themselves in a college classroom where we now know a shooting has taken place?
Well, as you've been indicating, this is that UCLA has done a tremendous job in preparing for events such as this. Not only the university, but the police department out there in Los Angeles working with the university. So the students should be pretty well trained. Now, from what I'm hearing, there was an alert, sort of like a message that went out to thousands of people on the campus right around 9 o'clock this morning, and that's when someone suspected that there had been a shooting on the campus. So it's still a very fluid situation. The police out there are trying to determine a perimeter, just like your previous guest said. Once they do that, then they can start accounting for everybody that's been in the building, everybody that's in the building, and then try to develop somewhat of a profile of the shooter. The question that's really important right now is whether or not there were any warning signs. And usually with cases like this, there are warning signs, so police are trying to figure that out.
Right. So that's the situation. Just to do the math on what you're talking about, something in 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time would be after 12 o'clock our time. We're 1:43 right now on the East Coast of the United States. So that's 10:43 out west. So yeah, I mean, you're trying to deal with something that you may have known beforehand, but then in the real time, it's different, right, Paul? It
is, but you know, Rod is 100% on point. That's referred to as a violence continuum and the various levels that we see of foreseeable actions, and he's entirely on point. When forensically, when this is going to be looked at in the days to come, that's the primary interest of everybody, all the investigators, is what we knew, how we knew it, when we knew it, with respect to the shooter once it identifies.
Now, the School of Engineering at UCLA is, and I'm just looking at it, and we can switch maybe to Google Maps ourselves in a few minutes, as well as the overhead shots, which we're getting from both KTTV and in this case KABC, is not very far from, say, if you know the campus of UCLA, I think, from looking at this, the UCLA bookstore, right? Okay, here's the Google Maps picture of it, and it would be, just to use directional terms, southeast of the famous Pauley Pavilion at UCLA, and all the basketball's been played over the years, but it's across a major thoroughfare from there, and on the other side, the School of Engineering, and this is supposed to be in Building 9, or I should say Building 4, next to Parking Lot 9. We've highlighted Building number 4, the engineering building on the campus of UCLA. So let's go back now. The UCLA spokesperson is confirming to us the shooting on campus and saying that there are 2 victims. Now, what we don't know, either Rod or Paul at this point, is the the condition of either one of those victims. But I think to Paul's point earlier, Rod, is sometimes we get this information early on, and it could be far worse than that. It's difficult to know when you're a law enforcement official of you just got to go in, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. And not only do you have to go in, you don't know what you're going to find once you get inside that building. And a lot of times in situations like this, there are other victims, just like your previous guest said. There's other victims that we don't know about. Now, real quickly, one way that we can try to determine the type of weapon that was used is based on the type of injuries to the victim. So the police are looking at that right now. They have ballistic experts looking at that right now to determine the type of weapon. Now, why is that important? The reason that's important is because now we in law enforcement will know what we're up against once we do come across the active
That's a good point, right? So
no question.
The type of weapon that's being, you got a guy with a pistol. That's certainly something different than if it's some sort of an automatic weapon. Then you might be going in there. It looks like obviously they're coming in fully armed, these police officers.
Right, and again, like Rod said, and I agree, the key part is when you first go in there, you're going to start really being able to uncover what you know and how many people have been hurt. And when you start analyzing that, you know what you're up against. The two key components that will be looked at.
Okay.
The behavioral profile of the individual shooter and the violence continuum are the signs that he showed.
Thank you.
No question.
That was just Rod. We had to go, and he has to take off now, but we'll be getting some more analysis. Paul Viollis is with us here in the studio at the Fox Business Network as we watch live pictures coming in from Los Angeles. KABC zooming out, and that's a large building. I think that the building we're looking at right now, you see it's 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, maybe
7 stories.
Yeah, 6, 7 stories. That's the engineering building, as I best understand it from looking it up on Google Maps, that we're dealing with the engineering building number 4. What we do not know, it was next to parking lot number 9. I do not know now what floor, and maybe we'll get more information on this as the information trickles in, what floor the classroom is. Say,
right. Well, we didn't even, what that classroom is, but the police are going to have to go in and clear the entire building.
Or to the, I should say, even if it was, and here they go. There's some police officers. It looks like they're going across the street, whether they're going in or not, or they're setting up on a perimeter. But go ahead. Police officers have to clear the entire building.
They're going to have to clear the entire building, and that is going to take time.
Because I was going to say, I don't even know that it was in a classroom. It was shooting in the building. Who knows where?
And it may have been in a classroom. Could have been an office. But when they clear that building, look how big that is.
Yeah.
And there's a building immediately adjacent to that. Maybe that's where they're headed.
And some other areas looks like a construction zone just to the outside of that.
Right.
I'm thinking out loud about, for example, escape routes. If you're the shooter in this case and you were trying to get out of the building, it looks like there are some areas where it might be difficult to find somebody who ran away if you didn't get there quickly enough.
Hence the importance of setting out the perimeter, an inner perimeter and outer perimeter. And they're doing that right now as we speak.
They've dealt with this, unfortunately. A lot of police departments have, but in Los Angeles, they're a very big police department, right?
No question, right? But they also, and I'll agree with what Rod said on that, they are a very well-trained police department, and UCLA has an exceptional reputation of handling this type of situation preemptively. So I would be shocked, Arnold, if the students hadn't received a certain amount of training in this area in education.
Well, that's the thing, and getting them to understand what their role in all of this is also important. Bill Daly, formerly of the FBI, is with us as we cover this breaking shooting on the campus of UCLA, where we know of 2 victims. We do not know of their conditions. We know that 2 people have been shot at the University of California at Los Angeles, and we know that happened inside one of the engineering buildings on campus where students were still going to class. Classes were not set to wrap up for the semester until the end of this week at UCLA. But as I say, Bill Daly joins us now via telephone, the former FBI investigator, and the role of what Paul was getting into there, the people who are potentially victims in these cases has become more and more important as we cover more of these cases, Bill, and that you have to kind of fend for yourself in some instances where you're the first line of defense, right?
Yeah, well, there certainly is a kind of a training that goes into potential workplace violence scenarios where you either are sheltering in place or you're evacuating. And many times it's a very personal decision. I know in some of the cases we've analyzed in the past happened around the country, those people who stayed in place and who protected themselves sometimes survived. Other people who evacuated right away sometimes could actually walk into the line of fire. So it is a very personal one, and as much as training goes on, ultimately at the very end of one of these incidents, it's really up to the individual and what they want to do.
Have we not found in our research, Bill, that there is just no right answer to that? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's it. There's no one pat answer for any situation. It really is a matter of people assessing what's happening at the moment. It's listening to what authorities may tell you from the outside, but in the first instance, when something like this occurs, let's say in this case where it's allegedly take place in one of the engineering buildings, is that people near and around that area, before they could be given advice, need to make some very quick decisions to protect themselves. We've seen that in places like Virginia Tech and other things where some of those split-second decisions have led to people surviving or not. So I think in this case, as we learn more about what's happening, is that it's now under the control of the Los Angeles Police Department and the UCLA Public Safety or Police Department as well. They'll be giving advice, and now they're in a better position to be able to provide people information about where to go, not to go, how to evacuate the area. I would also say it also provides a bit of a challenge for law enforcement as well, as you can see by some of the pictures that the viewers are looking at, is that we're talking about an urban campus here. We're talking about a place that's very porous. We're talking about a number of buildings, places within buildings where people can hide, or people can leave very quickly and blend into the student population as they're leaving. So it creates a number of challenges for police to understand, A, what's happening, but also contain that crime scene and potentially identify those people responsible for the shooting.
Now, again, we don't have any confirmation as to the condition of these victims, but we've been told a number of times, Paul and Bill, but Paul first, that there are 2 victims. Does the idea, and obviously from having observed and covered these situations, we know that information changes a lot, but the idea that in the first half an hour or whatever it is after an incident that the number stays the same at 2, does that tell you that it's likely that there were only 2, or is that jumping way too far ahead of ourselves?
I think it's too ahead of ourselves at this point. And again, I'll just cite, history tends to repeat itself. If you even take a look at Virginia Tech, we will confirm they really believe that there were only 2 victims.
Right.
So we really don't know at this point, and I think that's really the best way to look at it. The smart thing that needs to be done is being done right now, and that's closing this crime scene in. It's creating that scenario. Bill raised an excellent point. If this is a student, and we don't know who it is, but if it was, how many students you have on that campus, and how easy it is would be for that person to just mesh right into the crowd and then to walk right off the campus.
No, exactly right. And we're looking now at this looks like a perimeter shot that's been set up, I would think, fairly far away from the scene itself. And I'm just judging by the fact that we see one of the local photographers from the television station walking with a camera, and they normally wouldn't let the media get too close to that situation. But from your experience, Bill, the local authorities handle this until when? When do the federal authorities, I'd seen reports that the FBI was en route, but when do the federal authorities and some of the more investigative authorities get involved in a situation like this?
Well, many times local law enforcement will ask the FBI to help respond because, as we're discussing now, is that, with the facts being sometimes a bit opaque and unfolding, they're not too sure what's behind it, and they know that they may need to ask the FBI potentially for some access to investigative databases they have, identify individuals very quickly. And so those resources that the federal government, the FBI, can bring to bear will only support really the quality and certainly the skills that the LAPD has, but a much broader view of what's happening maybe around the country. We've seen cases like this where, particularly in San Bernardino, I'm not suggesting anyway this is that type of incident, but the FBI was able to kind of quickly go in and assess and kind of do some data checking to find out who people involved in this might be, what their connections are, and could there be other people associated. So many times local law enforcement do this as a proactive measure to get them involved, and maybe they don't need them, but at least they're available, standby, and a good working relationship with them will go a long way.
Now, we are told through Fox News that a law enforcement official that assets from the L.A. field office of the FBI are responding now to that shooting scene at UCLA and working with, as is described, their local partners, which obviously includes the LAPD. We don't know which assets the FBI is sending there, whether it, to our earlier point, it's investigative assets or it's tactical assets just to help in terms of securing things right now. We'll pass any of that along in terms of how they're coordinating things, but the FBI is already involved. To your earlier point about UCLA, to this campus, University of California at Los Angeles, it is almost a city in a city. I mean, there's about, the last numbers I saw, there are more than 40,000 students on the UCLA campus. Not that there would be that many there at one time in this moment, but you add up the people who work there and everything else, there are a lot of people there.
Of course. And remember, it's a completely self-contained city. It's got its own water treatment facility, its own power. It's a city in and of itself, which is why when you look at what's going on right now, the thing that we really have to focus on is containment, which is exactly what's happening. That's the key part right now. Because of the amount of information that's still ongoing, the most important part now is containing what they know, which is exactly what they're doing. The collaboration between law enforcement is exactly what you're going to see.
Who takes the lead on that?
Well, it's really going to be it's situational. It's case by case. Now, clearly in this particular situation, it'll probably stay with LAPD.
Right.
You know?
So it happened so recently.
Right. But now, remember, and as Bill pointed out, the LAPD, the FBI, I mean, all of these agencies collaborate, and that's something that the country really needs to know more about. Our law enforcement does a really good job of collaborating, and you get an incident like this, they train in advance for things like this, Carl. So the fact that the FBI's field office in LA is responding is just protocol.
Wider discussion, maybe, and we can get into it a little bit, that certainly relates to some of the terrorism cases and other things, which I'm sure is what you're referring to, and the coordination that needed to improve, that has improved over the years. I want to put at least one more piece of information out there. We're getting this actually from the student-run newspaper at UCLA, the Daily Bruin, which, you know, it wouldn't be surprising that you would get information reported from the student newspaper to a situation like this, but I do tell you that's where it's coming from. They have sent out something on their Twitter account that the shooter is wearing a black jacket and black pants, and they cite police. I don't know if that's LAPD or campus police, but they cite the police saying black jacket and black pants is the shooter. Now, I don't have anything else on, you know, what would be more interesting there would be where that person's going, right? Or did that person leave the building?
And how do they get that information? Is this off of CCTV? I mean, is this an eyewitness? Where did that information come from?
Because that would tell us.
How can it be validated?
Right. Well, that's the thing. It would tell us where the person is.
Exactly.
Or, you know, not maybe where he was. Where he was, right? Which would be more helpful in this case.
And how old is he? Is he older? Is he younger? I mean, what's he look like?
Right. No other description that I know of yet. Nothing else.
Right. So that's a. You know, again, when we see incidences like this, during these first hours, that's when the information constantly changes over and over again until we can really validate who we have and who we're looking at. Who are the victims? Were they students? Were they teachers? Were they administrators? Who were they?
We don't know, Bill Daly, if they're, you know, it's interesting as Paul and I have been watching this that we have seen moments where the law enforcement authorities have looked to be acting with much more of a sense of urgency than other moments. And now we see, and by the way, we're limited to the camera shots that we're getting from our affiliates out there right now, overhead from KTTV, to what we see. But sometimes they're just milling around. Other times they really look like they're moving with a sense of purpose and going somewhere. Why is that, or what does that tell us?
Well, I think it would be an indication that they kind of surrounding. If you look at this being kind of like a bullseye kind of zone, they come from the outside perimeter and you start working your way more towards where the incidents occurred. So you're starting to rule out perhaps other scenes as you go through this process. And so there may have been a sense of urgency when they first got there to get closer to where the scene is, where the incident has occurred, where the individuals were injured. We don't know the condition yet. And then as they start to feel more comfortable that the outside perimeter rings are more secure, there's a level of comfort, and they're just standing by waiting to be called in. You know, I think another interesting point that Paul raised here is something that takes a little time, but in today's day of technology, it can move pretty quickly, is that many corporate campuses, or many campuses around the country, schools and corporations have elaborate closed-circuit camera systems. Those are very helpful in being able to put together what happened and have images of people who may be moving in and around the area where the incident took place. So I am sure one of the places that the police have congregated around is the Security Control Center, to be able to get a better view as to what may have happened leading up to it, and more so what happened afterwards and who left that scene. As much as we get these descriptions from time to time during an incident about what people look like, we know that sometimes changes even in the best conditions where we have eyewitnesses. So we always need to take that with a grain of salt, but certainly images from a closed-circuit camera system are much more compelling than sometimes people's recollections of what happened.
Absolutely right. Bill Daly, as always, thank you for your expertise. Former FBI investigator with us here as we cover the shooting on the campus of UCLA in Los Angeles, California, where we know of 2 victims, and we do not have any confirmation yet as to their condition. The shooting taking place while classes were still in session in the late morning hours, or the mid-morning hours, most likely, in Los Angeles. And we know, again, of the 2 victims, a little bit more. Paul Viollis also with us from that Daily Bruin, which is the student-run newspaper, to a description. The shooter described as a white male, they say about 6 feet tall. So that adds to the black pants and the black shirt. So that's how things trickle in, I guess.
Right, and it really still, begs the question, how did they get that information? Is it an eyewitness, or did it come from an actual camera footage?
Right, so if it's a...
And where was he? Was he carrying a weapon? What kind of weapon was he carrying? What direction was he headed? Was he getting in a vehicle? All this information, I would really want to know. If they already know who he is, how do we know who he is?
Paul, thank you again for your expertise as
Always
well.
a pleasure.
We appreciate it in helping us cover this breaking situation. Live photos from KABC now in Los Angeles of an engineering building on the campus of UCLA where there has been a shooting today. In the morning on the West Coast, 2 people on the campus of UCLA, from what we understand, have been shot. There are 2 victims of this shooting. The campus newspaper is describing a person wearing a black shirt and black pants, 6 feet tall, a white male that they say the police are looking for. Our coverage continues now on the Fox Business Network with Trish Regan. Trish?
Thank you so much. Breaking right now, everyone. UCLA on lockdown. Students are being told to get to a secure location after at least 2 people were injured in a shooting on campus as police right now search for that shooter. I am Trish Regan. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. KTTV, our local station out there, is reporting that a shooting took place in the engineering building, and LAPD sources are telling Fox News that they got a call from UCLA security of an active shooter situation.